This presentation should give a brief description of how we are managing distance learning at Lancing and how we will support students who are not in school. The Lancing Virtual Learning Environment, or VLE, will be the central hub for activities that we will use to organise distance learning. The virtual learning environment has two important facets to it. The first is the task setting application within the virtual learning environment, which we will use at Lancing in order to set tasks to describe the activities that we wish students to complete during their normal classroom slots. Allied to this, the tasks will link to pages within the virtual learning environment, where there will be learning resources and descriptions of activities, many of which will be interactive, in order to aid students in the completion of their tasks during lessons. Activities for all years and for topics at A-level and sixth form subjects will be available on the VLE. It might be easiest if I just break out of this presentation for a moment and show you what a VLE page looks like. So we're just navigating away onto an example page. This is in fact an A-level English Literature coursework page that I produced last year. It is something which the students are already very familiar with. It's one way in which we already organise work. And this page will give you a demonstration of some of the facilities that we are able to use in order to support distance learning. So here you can see, for example, coursework titles. These are the actual titles that people produced for a large portion of their A-level English Literature last year. Underneath it here, you can see an embedded audio player where I have in fact recorded myself talking to describe the coursework criteria and how one might approach an answer. Teachers will be able to record audio on a regular basis as well as using audio which is already deployed. So things like podcasts which are freely available on the internet, we can embed those within our virtual learning environment so that students can listen to those things, both their voices and the voices of experts throughout the world, to help them with their learning. Underneath here you can see that this is a subject specification, but it's also an embedded PDF where we can embed documents in PDF format onto a single page so that students can also access that material from the page. You'll see beneath this I've actually included some text here which is a worked example of an examination answer. And underneath this, below it, we also have embedded PowerPoint slides. Now these will be another format by which teachers will be able to use the equivalent of whiteboard notes or better, and they'll be able to ally those to audio recordings so that they can give a talk through to students of things that they may wish to do. So you can do a fair level of what teachers call didactic instruction, which in old parlance maybe chalk and talk, but in a much more sophisticated way. In fact, as we scroll down here, you can see where I have embedded audio recordings, and in fact, the 8 parts of this podcast actually give a full reading of an A-level novella, so that students could self-study and keep up. There are some more PowerPoint presentations down here, but beneath it, we can also harness the power of the World Wide Web entirely to our advantage. So here, for example, there are direct live links to The Guardian, to the BBC, and indeed to Google Books, a vast online library of resources. We can also embed other media players in here. So, for example, I have the Irish broadcaster RTE here on Brian Friel and his career, him being one of the playwrights that we studied, and another documentary here from him, so we've got both radio and television. Beneath this, you'll see an embedded journal. And here we can also allow our students to access via these VLE pages some of the many subscriptions that we have to educational websites. So JSTOR here, for example, is the journal store for academic journals. We also have online library and encyclopedia subscriptions, as well as subscriptions to magazines And we can link all of these in so that we're using our resources. Our VLE e-library, our electronic library, is an incredible array of resources which students can access via the virtual learning environment, which they know where they are, and in these VLE pages, our subject teachers can point them directly to that material so that they can have activity there as well to be helping them. One other thing that we don't have within these pages, but which is available via the VLE, is the capacity to produce interactive quizzing so that students can complete questions and indeed receive marks and feedbacks from a single VLE page. This links into a number of other online resources which we have and which you may already be familiar with, things like Memrise and Socrative, Kahoot and the like, which are other online quizzing applications which we currently use. All of this lies within these VLE pages to provide students with a very rich, interactive means of accessing a lot of distance learning material. Let's go back to the presentation. We need to talk a little about how we will maintain the school's routines. We think that task setting, so to signal a task for the start of every lesson, will allow students to be able to maintain the structure of the school day. So we're going to keep the timetable going during our published term dates, and for each activity that we have, at that time there will be a task set. So if you have English period 1 on a Monday, you'll be set a task for period 1, and that will take you to a VLE page that will contain activities to last you the 40 minutes that class would normally take. This means that even if a student is working in another time zone, they can maintain the same structure and integrity of their school day, and that will provide some useful routines for them to keep their activity ticking over. I've already described for you what a VLE page may contain. The variety of activities we think is absolutely key to provide stimulus and to allow students to do things. Live teaching, however, will not be the norm via audio and video resources. Where we think it will be useful, we will deploy it, and we will, on occasions, record us doing that, just as I'm recording things here. But of course, we need to be aware to the fact that we are working in multiple time zones, and the one-size-fits-all model of we will live stream means that some people will have to get up at deeply unreasonable hours, and we're aware of the fact that you're also having to maintain their working lives from afar while doing distance learning. The idea of maintaining this routine is that we can allow students the normality of their days, the structure to help them, and so that we can be available during the course of those school days in order to help them with their learning. The one slight change that we will make to those routines is that where ordinarily we have lessons on a Saturday, we are not going to do that now. We're in fact going to run Monday to Friday, and where on a Tuesday afternoon students ordinarily have sport and we don't run academic lessons, we'll replace that Tuesday afternoon slot by sliding in the lessons that we normally have on a Saturday, allowing students to maintain a Monday to Friday routine. We will of course be in contact separately about how students can maintain physical activity during their time away from us, and I know that the Director of Sport has some interesting ideas on how we can do that, and we'll communicate those separately. We think it's vital, of course, that you're able to keep abreast of your child's activities, and I'm going to break into another section of the VLE now to show you how it is possible to do that. We'll also be providing a separate presentation for students where we'll be urging them to also communicate with you about how to do this, but I'm going to show you a little of the VLE now in order that you can see where to check on the activities that have been set for students. So we're just breaking across again now into the VLE, and I'm going to go to the dashboard. So this is my dashboard, and it allows me to see my current activities and my timetable. But if we scroll up to the top here, I'm going to circle in the top right-hand corner the fact that every user of the VLE, every Lancing student and every Lancing teacher, has their own individual profile. And if I click on this arrow next to my name here, you will see that there is a Your Profile button. Now, if you get the student that you're looking after to click on that Your Profile button, that will take them directly to their timetable and to a full list of the tasks that they've been set, so that you can see that material and you can then ask them to see the VLE pages that contain the materials to support them in the completion of activities for their tasks. This should allow you a full sense of what is going on with student activities and should help you to have a clear sense of what students are up to during the course of their day. Let's go back to that presentation now. The VLE profile page then is an important place where you can check those tasks set, and I think it's a really good idea to sit down for a while with the individual student and have a look at some of the VLE pages so that you can see the activities that's being set. Our staff are of course committed to producing high quality resources to enable learning for all of our students wherever they may be, and we have been actively training our staff in content creation to enable this. In terms of public examination support, obviously we must respond, as I'm making this video, to the current information set out by the government. So Ofqual are the Office for Qualifications, the UK central government's organisation body for all public examinations. Now, they have announced on the 18th of March that summer examinations will not occur in the usual way, but they have not yet outlined how arrangements will change. We, of course, will, as soon as we have information, give that information to you about how those changes will occur, and of course, we'll respond to changing advice. Be assured it is our job and our pleasure to be representing the very best interests of all Lancing students and to be preparing them as best we can. And we think it's important in these uncertain times to be keeping on teaching the subject content as much as we can, so that whenever we have clarity over what happens next, students will be amply prepared to face the challenges ahead. We've done a survey, of course, of all of our heads of department, and at the time of writing to you, virtually all courses already have complete course coverage. The very few final remnants of course coverage can, heads of department assure me, be covered via distance learning. Ordinarily at this time, we would be providing ample revision materials in any case for students. When they're physically here, some of that material would be handed out in hard copy form. Of course, whilst we have students all over the world, we'll be putting all of that material too on the virtual learning environment to allow structured revision in the Easter holidays. Of course, when we know precisely what's going to happen with assessment, we will communicate with you directly. Let's move onwards. In order to help students, as well as the virtual learning environment, we've enabled a new piece of software called Microsoft Teams, which I'm sure many of you are already using within business. This is an adjunct to the VLE, and it will be organised in various different ways. We will create teams for individual classes, so your student for their English class will have a team, for example, for that class, as they will have one for mathematics, for science, etc. These will take various formats. The major ones will be a message board format in which, under topic channels, students will be able to post questions and to interact with their teachers. This will be the equivalent of asking questions in class, where students can, when they've fulfilled their activities on the VLE or are trying to do so, they can seek clarification and they can have a discussion with one another. That's a live format where all of the class can interact together with their teacher. There's also a chat function within Microsoft Teams which allows students to interact one-to-one with their teacher for some individualised and personalised feedback. There are the capacities for audio and video check-ins as well. Those will need to be at the instigation of teachers rather than at students, and as I've already explained, we'll deploy those where we think they will be useful and reasonable, alongside the many other resources that are available via the virtual learning environment. Microsoft Teams will also be available for tutors. So academic tutors for individual students will proactively make contact with their tutees in order to check in on how they are finding distance learning. Now that may be by audio, by video, or by a message board or chat function. And that's a chance for us to make sure that individual students are coping well. And we will, just as we would normally do on site during term time, tutors will be making those contacts direct with their tutees. It's also very likely that house teams will be using Teams to communicate with boarding houses to allow group communications to maintain a sense of community and to let our charges know what each other are up to during the course of their time away from us. For parents, lines of communication should be as normal via the housemistress or the housemaster, who's the normal, usual single port of call. However, if individual parents or guardians have questions about provision in particular subjects, we actively encourage you to contact heads of academic departments directly to seek any clarification that you may need. Tutors will be a regular and proactive source of contact directly with students as well, and we're making a separate presentation, particularly about Microsoft Teams, for students, and that will be the means by which we will be actively encouraging students to contact their individual subject teachers, tutors, etc. for guidance and clarification on distance learning. I hope that this has been of some help as a presentation. Thank you for listening, and of course, if you have questions, housemasters, housemistresses are the very best first port of call for this. Thank you.